Okay, guys, welcome to this bonus episode of Pulp Kitchen. This is our Dune Part 2 Spoilercast. If you haven't listened to episode 117, we reviewed Dune Part 2 and gave our full thoughts on it. If you haven't listened to that yet, please go back and listen to it. We talked about the film in a spoiler-free context. This, however, we will be talking about the plot. So if you haven't seen the film yet, please switch off, go back to a spoiler-free review, go see the film, come back, enjoy this spoiler experience. Let's just brief. So, George, we just reviewed it, but for people who haven't sort of listened to the other episode in a while, briefly, George, what did you make of Dune Part 2? We both sort of glowing review.
I thought it was absolutely sensational, magnificent. I really was genuinely blown away. I don't have that experience often with the cinema. I kind of staggered out, basically speechless, and my head kind of ringing with it. I thought it was a huge achievement.
Yeah, I thought the same. I thought we touched upon how much that film has predated so much of seminal sci-fi and cinema that we regard, and how that is the way that you tell a story in a new way for audiences, despite it being a very familiar story. It totally earns its style and its spectacle, and it's just brilliant in every single way. But George,
it's also worth saying that I've seen a lot of reviews refer to the film as one of the best science fiction films ever made, and in a way I do really agree with that, because I think if you
big claim,
but if you like science fiction, if you like sci-fi more typically, if you like sci-fi, space opera, big stuff, I really don't think this film basically gives you all of that. I don't know what else you would want that isn't in this film. You have conflict,
Space Game of Thrones.
Exactly, Space Game of Thrones.
You see why I got commissioned.
Space of Thrones.
I'm sitting on a book. Don't imagine the commission. I'm sitting on a book that is Game of Thrones in space.
Yeah.
This one was like, yeah, make it. So let's just briefly go over some of the things that happen in Dune Part 2. So where do we want to start with this?
Okay, so
you go for it.
I'll try and just jump in if I'm missing anything. So the film begins straight after Part 1, and if you want to recap on Part 1, we do.
Please go back to the full episode, George, did all that.
So we begin with the princess, played by Florence Pugh, the daughter of the Emperor, played by Christopher Walken, two characters that weren't in the first part.
Arrakis.
She's basically talking about what happened, which is that the Harkonnens took Arrakis back from the Atreides in a surprise attack that wiped out one of the biggest houses, which was House Atreides, and slaughtered them. The Harkonnens now recontrol the spice fields of Arrakis, and they are conducting a war of terror against the Fremen. Not only before they would fight the Fremen while trying to get spice, but now the Baron says, I want you to kill all the Fremen. I want them wiped out. This is proving very difficult because the Fremen are very good at fighting, and it is their native land. It is an existential fight for them. So you have this constant thwarting of Harkonnen efforts in the desert, much to the disappointment and dismay and fury of Rabban, played by Dave Bautista, and the Baron, played by Stellan Skarsgård. Paul and his mother, Lady Jessica, are in the desert with the Fremen, learning their ways, and very quickly, very soon on, Lady Jessica is made the Reverend Mother of the Fremen, because she is a Bene Gesserit herself, and their Reverend Mother is dying, and she's given blue juice.
It's terrifying. It's the juice from the baby sandworm that they have, and so dark and twisted.
And then because of a reason, my interpretation
there's an older
is
woman with a wrinkly face whose eyes roll back.
If anyone has ever, this is really funny. If anyone has ever seen the film The Great Beauty, which came out 10 years ago, that woman is in that film playing an elderly nun who was quite wise. I was literally like, you're playing the same person. I thought that was makeup 10 years ago. Anyway, but my interpretation is that they didn't realize that she was pregnant, and that has unleashed some greater power within her. And she's having this sort of, throughout the film, dialogue with her unborn child, who we see in a vision later on, played surprisingly by Anya Taylor-Joy.
And who she's like the Zendaya of this movie, gets to be in visions of the future by the sea.
The trailer for the next film.
And
Lady Jessica very much wants Paul to assume the role of the Lassan al-Gaib, the Kwisatz Haderach, the great power to be. Paul thinks it's all a bit nonsense, and he wants to stay loyal to the Fremen. Meanwhile, Josh Brolin returns, quite late into the film, but basically returns and says, don't forget about being an Atreides. You're an Atreides. You got to do that. This is all going around in Paul's head. Paul's still having visions of the future. And he's just developed a relationship with Chani, played by Zendaya, who is a loyal Fremen who does not believe in the prophecy. And the more that Paul gets pulled into the gravitational pull, thank you, of this prophecy, which he does reluctantly almost until the very end, Zendaya gets more and more disillusioned with him, even though they have this connection. But Paul sees it as a greater purpose, this holy war that's going to happen. Like I said, Paul is having visions of the future, but he's determined to try and set his own path and not have this holy war happen that he thinks will happen in the future.
From all sides, he's being told he is meant to be fulfilling some sort of prophecy and some sort of idea of, and he's meant to lead, prophesize thing. Yeah.
So he stays with the Fremen. He learns how to ride a sandworm in a great sequence, fantastic. That's all great. He fights some he fights some of the Harkonnens. The Baron's like, this is really annoying. The Reverend Mother, played by Charlotte Rampling, says Paul Atreides might still be alive. We don't know, but even if he's not, we have other prospects that could be the prophecy, including Fade Rotha, Baron Fade Rotha, who Florence Pugh says, "Are you kidding me? He's crazy." And we then go and see a 20-minute sequence in an arena in which we see the Baron's nephew, Fade Rotha, fight, and he's ruthless and he's psychotic and he's crazy. And he then arrives on Arrakis as the governor of Arrakis, demoting Raban, and then begins a blood-filled onslaught of Arrakis, and then the Fremen are kind of pushed to the south, and everyone keeps saying, I think there's about 4 times in this movie people say the south of Arrakis is uninhabitable. No one lives there.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah,
you would say everyone knows.
Everyone knows that. But
they just slice his fucking leg. You cannot advise a senior Harkonnen on anything they've said, regardless of how stupid or misinformed they were.
Yeah.
If you say one thing, gone. You have to just be like, we will learn to fly.
They are slices. They will just
gone.
They will cut.
If you're a woman, don't even think about it.
My goodness.
The very gendered slaughter of the assistants.
It's quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be.
And like the women in the, we did sort of touch on this in the last film, when the Baron is sort of in his little creepy oil bath, and there's 2 women like just in the corner of the room.
Thrown them in,
yeah. The implication is not.
That's
nice.
the thing. It's like you don't see like spurts of red blood, which is probably why it's avoided like a 12A. That's why it's not PG.
Yeah.
But like, the implication is quite disturbing.
And they're very testosterone-fueled, overly masculine, just unpleasant in all the ways.
Anyway, so that's the situation, and then the movie builds to a climax. I will go through the whole movie. Right?
Yeah.
The movie builds to a climax in which Paul basically, after being given the blue goo,
he had it. He
assumes the role of the prophecy and realizes that this is the only way to fulfill it. He says, I see many futures, but I see a narrow path. Many futures, many in which our enemies succeed, but I see a narrow path.
Doctor Strange, Endgame.
Literally, isn't it? And he conducts this spectacular battle, which involves the Atreides' weapons arsenal, and then 3 sandworms riding towards them. That was a moment when I just thought, fuck that's incredible.
It's so funny when because one of my criticisms is that you don't finish.
Okay. 3 sandworms arrive, all this stuff, takes the Emperor by surprise, wipes out his army, and you get this sort of sequence in the Emperor's throne room where the Baron has been killed, but the Emperor has to answer for his actions. And Paul Atreides says, I want the throne. You stand down. I will marry your daughter. Zendaya's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Heartbroken.
Yeah.
They really linger on her face to show the heartbreak as well. And, you have to answer for your crimes against the Atreides. Fade Rotha steps forward and says, well, I will be your tribute, whatever. I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah.
And they have this knife fight, which also the combat style of the knife is incredible.
That's the whole thing I have to say about how the choice to withhold music from that and just have the sound there is really smart. Again, like you have a final battle scene between 2 people who are always going to fight. You reinvent it and make it fresh and original, and therefore very interesting to watch.
I assumed I knew that he would live, but it gets really close, and there was a couple of times I thought, I don't know how this movie's going to end, actually, because I'm
so movie knife fight to have like a surprise knife go in.
And then ultimately Paul succeeds in the knife fight, kills Fade Rotha, takes the Emperor's daughter as his own, and basically becomes Emperor. But the great houses, the fellow great houses, do not accept this, and they are therefore basically at war. So he takes the remaining of the ships, and it begins, and Lady Jessica says, so the Holy War begins, and Paul's vision has basically come true of mass slaughter, fanatical leadership, fanatical spiritualism conducted throughout the universe on the basis of him as a messiah. And Chani runs away, goes to ride a sandworm and thinks, I'm not having any of this shite.
Yeah. Paul really used his deep voice in that final scene. He's like, silence!
Oh, yeah. I love the voice.
Yeah, that's good.
Anyway.
I just want to say your recall of the plot has been second to none. I've never sort of enjoyed not having to take on that burden so much in the years we've been doing this podcast. You just had that down. Well, you have a sip of water and you enjoy. Okay, so here's my comment about the film being seminal and doing everything that it does with the most interesting paintbrush. It stands true. Paul Atreides, however, for me, in a lot of ways, is a massive example of a Mary Sue.
A Mary Sue?
A Mary Sue
Explain
is
again,
a
James.
literary term for usual film characters. They don't have to be women, but they tend to be. The character who, whenever is faced with a problem or an altercation, always rises to the occasion and is able to solve it. So Rey from The Force Awakens was a Mary Sue. Early pre-Daniel Craig James Bonds are all Mary Sues. Katniss Everdeen is a Mary Sue. Mary Poppins is a Mary Sue. So as characters, they always... Harry Potter in the first 4 Harry Potter books, huge Mary Sue.
They have the power within them all along.
Every time they're given a situation, they always rise to the occasion. So Paul always is told, you're going to do great things. You're going to go on and become this prophecy. Regardless of how that prophecy takes shape in the end, he always learns the power, rides the sand... Not the grandfather sandworm, totally fine. Rides the sandworm, goes on to fight someone who's very physically capable in combat. We get Paul has been trained in combat, but we don't know that he's
I know what you mean. He's
so
very good, isn't he,
He's
Paul?
very good. And Austin Butler was... Even though there's an interesting dynamic I'll get onto, which is the fact that he fights enemies who are... inhibited by poison and it's very much prearranged. It's an interesting sort of confidence thing. Like Paul, for me, as a character, always rises to the occasion. So he's interesting and he's fun, but I never worried for his safety when he goes on and does the thing he said he was going to do from the very beginning of the film. I'm like, cool. Did it
not cross your mind in the knife fight once that he might actually be killed?
Potentially, but I thought there'd be another dynamic or someone would come in to save him or his inner voice, a deeper power that he had would be there. That's my only criticism.
But I think I guess the success of the film is that with those narrative shortcomings,
it totally holds up in every other way. So that's just something that I'm aware of as a criticism of Paul Atreides. I don't think any actor is doing bad. I don't think the writing makes it cheesy. It just is very much there. It is a huge example of a Mary Sue.
You know what he needed? And with no disrespect, and pardon the profanity, he needed the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, he needed to lose.
He needed Neo really gets the shit kicked out of him as well.
Yes,
but
the great Luke Skywalker gets the shit kicked out of him.
Cuts his hand off.
Yeah, it's great. So like when Neo turns around to face the agent in the end, that moment means so much. You're like, oh, and Morpheus is like, he is beginning to believe.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you write like a final action scene. So it is missing that element for me.
Yes.
But I have talked about how this is a novel from the 1960s.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it is this film's responsibility to reinvent that. I think what it instead does is tells that story in the most artistic flair. So that's just there in my mind.
It does the best it can with the material that it has, and it succeeds.
I want to give credit to the riding of the sandworm scene. You and I watched that Dune trailer a number of times. It's very hard to avoid it. And I think that first big trailer, we were like, I wish they hadn't shown that. And they showed...
Was that the shot you meant when you said they wish they hadn't shown it?
No, the shot was the final at the end. Which actually wasn't as relevant as I thought
The
it
shot
would be.
I wish they hadn't put in the trailer is him and Austin Butler about to do a knife fight.
Sure.
That is the last 10 minutes of a 3-hour
Which, of course,
movie.
like trailer maths, you can figure out was always going to happen. But like... Just
I
in
didn't need to
general.
see it, yeah.
Anyway, a lot of the kinetic sequence of that sandworm scene is shown in the trailer, but experiencing the sandworm scene, even though I know he's going to successfully ride it, oh my God.
Yeah.
And like, just even though I knew he was going to make it, the rumble and the scale and how he falls and you're just like, it's all just dust and sand. He gets a hook and the worm reveals itself. It's just so good.
But I never thought for a second, there's the green screen. There's the CGI. It's completely immersive.
Totally there.
Yeah.
Just want to give a shout out to that. The attack which you mentioned when the 3 sandworms come through and you have the sort of Lord of the Rings caliber style people running together. Brilliant. I mentioned before the final knife fight. Yeah. Really interesting. I love that they withheld the score there and just had the grunting and the slicing and the punching and the thing. And a very small arena for that big fight with everyone watching.
A crowded room.
Yeah. Do you know what biblically the story reminds me of? It reminds me of like Moses coming to Ramesses after he's lost, but he's come from the desert with a people. That really reminds me of that.
I haven't seen
it's
the
very
Prince of Egypt
very
in a while.
Pesach. Very Pesach for me.
I haven't brushed
Yeah,
up
like
on it.
someone who's
I get it.
banished and gone into the desert, comes back with
sees the
this
burning bush.
sees the burning bush, rides the sandworm. He comes back and reaps a plague upon Ramesses.
Plague in both their houses. That's right.
It's just very biblical.
All the
for me.
houses, basically.
All of them.
With
the people whose land it is, like if you want to get
I think your points are completely valid, and like I said, but it's the success of the film that those aren't a problem for us, really. Those problems never pulled you out, right? Really?
No. It's just I'm aware of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's. I would just say there's a couple of micro condensions that happen. Like it's revealed 2/3 in that his mother is the daughter of the Baron.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh. And then I'm like, it doesn't, in a way, doesn't matter. I'm sure in the books that's quite significant, and I'm sure there is details, and maybe you could explain to me why in this film it's important, but it's kind of in there, and I thought, oh, we really are chucking more into the pile.
There's an implication that the Bene Gesserit have always been crossbreeding. Yeah. No one's really who this is. Yeah, like the union between the Duke, Paul's father, and Rebecca Ferguson is like you never really get a sense for their relationship, really.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, like how does that whole spiritual side of it fit into this very like political side?
And they seem to be able to determine the sex of their baby.
Oh yeah, no, I don't remember that. But,
yeah, but like with Lea Seydoux, they're like, and I've made sure I've got a girl. Basically, she's like,
right, yeah.
She's been impregnated by Fade Rother. She's like, oh, I made sure it's a girl.
Yeah, is that going to come back for another one? There's more. Yeah. A couple of scenes I like the scene between Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya when they're looking out over the dunes of sand. Yeah. And she's like, does water really fall from the sky? She's like, yeah, it falls sometimes for days at a time. And where you see sand, we have ocean. She's like, I don't believe it. I thought it was a really cool scene of someone who's never seen oceans of water or any oceans of sand. The real reason why I wanted more Harkonnen is that I really thought the idea of Fade Rother's fights and his victories and his masculinity being undermined by the fact that his enemies are weakened and poisoned. I would have loved to have seen more conflict between him and his uncle and his grandfather, and who supersedes.
Who's his grandfather?
You mean his dad?
His uncle's the Baron.
His uncle's the Baron.
I don't know who his dad is, but
who's Dave Bautista?
I don't know. I don't know how they are related because the Baron is uncle to both of them, but they're not brothers.
That's it. Okay, fine.
So.
He's having a lot of kids.
That dynamic between the three of them, those three Harkonnens, I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, could be...
And they just stole the show every time they were on screen. I was like, I could have had more of Austin Butler feeling undermined. Make him act out and prove his worthiness with violence in the only way that he could. I just could have done with more.
I do love the design of all the troops, but like the Sardaukar with their particular type of swords. You know, the Emperor's army.
Yes, yeah.
And like the end where they all put their swords down and sort of march into the dust. The thing is, you've been quite observant, and I really appreciate it on your views. I think it was one of those things that my cupboard was full with what it gave me, that I almost can't think of any major criticisms, and maybe they'll become more pronounced on second viewing. But people have said to me when I said that, people really want to go to see this film with me. And they're like, would you see it again? I'm like, yeah, I will, and I would. But I really feel like I got such a good measure of it and had such a great experience that I kind of want to sit with that for a while.
I'm in no rush to see it like this week.
No, I'm not. I
don't have
got
time.
it. I'm full.
But
what a great meal that was.
I hope, and I'm sure it will, because it will be sort of playing on the bigger screens for a while. I hope I can see it in 5-6 weeks' time. Is that a stretch?
Probably. No.
That's when I think I'll want to jump back in. I want to forget a little bit of it. I don't want to have all the best shots running through my mind, and I want to jump in and just be blasted again.
Yeah.
I think my sperm count lowered during that screening because there was so much shaking. Yeah,
I like I said in the non-spoiler review on the main show, is like I really do. Like I could sit here and probably write all my thoughts about like criticisms or things I think couldn't work, but it's like I was so overwhelmed, and like I said, I surrendered myself. I let myself just take part in this grand science fiction. It was like mentally, I put my pen away.
Which is the best way to experience it.
Which is great. So
and funnier than I thought it would be. Like Javier Bardem gets a good laugh. Like he's so blindly devoted to the idea that, and everything Paul does, if he just like catches something right, he's like, he is Nissan Al-Gaib. It's quite funny. He just refuses. Everyone's like, oh, you've been saying this for years. He's like, but this time it's real. Look at him go.
I would be interested to know. I really had to think more about the role of the Jamis character in the first one. But anyway,
the what character?
Jamis is the guy he kills at the knife fight at the end of the first one.
I
there's
see.
also referred to in visions in this. It'll all become clear. But also the sound design. So you know, and in the first bit when the Harkonnens are being killed and they're falling off the cliff, it's like.
Yes,
and then the guns, the laser guns, you really hear the pounding of it.
There's a great action scene when Paul and Zendaya are fighting this Harkonnen ship, and they're running between the shade of the legs to try and get it. It's just like really, really well crafted scene. Really well crafted.
Look, we'll talk in spoiler detail probably in the future when we have more emails about it. But like, we wanted to give you our raw thoughts straight out of the spoiler stuff. Do email in to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com and let us know your thoughts. We love to hear it. It is one of the biggest films of the year, but I feel so relieved and happy. I feel so happy that I've seen a great film at the cinema.
If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, it's out Friday, so full praise. Definitely go and check it out. Find the biggest screen you can. Enjoy it. I like that, and there's not a single bit of moisture that Javier Bardem lets go to waste. Like if a tear goes, he's like,
yep.
Snot.
I'm having that.
I love that. If someone dies, he's like, don't get rid of it, and then they put it in that big, and in their big pool, their big temple pool of water,
which is filled. And as Rebecca Ferguson says, so many lives,
so many lives
have been poured into that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dune Part 2. That was it. We really enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts again to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. Don't forget, we post main episodes every week, every single Wednesday. Check on the feed for those, and we post bonus episodes. Continue to follow us on social media.
If you just fancy the spoiler cast and you didn't want to listen to our main episode, go and listen to it. We talk about the actual film, spoiler free, for way longer. So go and check that out. See you next week for more fun film stuff. Thank you for listening.
Bye.